Welcome, everyone. This is Now with Lisa Bonnice, and go figure, I'm Lisa Bonnice. I have a fun special guest today, Scottish comedian, actress, author, and viral video star, Eleanor Morton. Eleanor is well known for her online sketch characters like Craig the Tour Guide and documentarian Suzanne Primate, which have gained her fans such as Patton Oswalt, Michael McKean, and me. Because of her uncanny talent with so many accents, I asked her to narrate my historical fiction novel, Castle Gate, which tells the story of my Scottish ancestors who emigrated to the US over 100 years ago, several of whom were killed in the Castlegate mine disaster. Not exactly comedy, but this is where the actress side comes in. Eleanor did an incredible job with the narration, and I wanted to spend some time with her today so you could get to know her as well. Eleanor, welcome. It's so good to see you again.
It's so nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm delighted. I've been looking forward to this for a while now. Now let's start at the beginning. The best place to start. Let's talk about your
hmm
background in comedy. How long have you been
hmm
stand up? What made you want to get up there on the stage? All the things.
I have been doing it. It will be 16 years in May, which seems crazy. So I started when I was a teenager. I kind of watched a lot of mostly British comedians when I was younger, and I thought, oh, that's a job. That's a cool job. That's better. I wanted to do acting, but um, then I was sort of introduced to stand up, and I think it appealed to me because you get to kind of create your own things, and it's not a lot of control when you're an actor. And with stand up, it's very much all your own stuff. So yeah, I started out in Edinburgh, where I am also from, and I did a few gigs here and there, and then obviously we have the Edinburgh Fringe Festival here, which is a huge arts festival. It's sort of famous for its comedy every August. So I was able to kind of practice there and um, sort of hone my stuff a bit. And yeah, and I'm still doing it. So I moved to London for a bit in my 20s, and then I did stuff down there, and I'm back home now in Edinburgh, and yeah, I've been doing something to do with performing basically for my whole life, but this is where I've landed now. So
Nice.
that's the story.
Nice. Now, you and I have talked in the past where, I did stand up back in the Stone Age.
Mm,
And this was actually in like the 80s and 90s. That's how old I
yeah,
am. And back then, being a female comic was
yeah,
really hard. It was hard to get
I
respect.
bet.
They wouldn't book more than one woman on a show at a time
hmm
because people just wouldn't buy tickets. We don't want to see a bunch of broads. Is it
Yeah.
still like that, or is it okay now for women?
Well, it really depends. I think it is definitely much better in a lot of ways. Like even from when I started, like 15 years ago, there's you can see, like you said, it was often, you'd be the only woman on the bill a lot of the time, and you'd be very aware of that. And the green room would be very like laddie. And now, yeah, it's much rarer that you'll be the only woman, which is nice. But I think I'm still surprised sometimes when I come across people, they'll come up to me after the show and you can ask, I mean, you maybe have got this too, you can ask any female comedian. People will come up to them and say, "I don't normally like women comedians, but I liked you," and it's meant to be a big compliment. Of course, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. So yeah, I think we've become more visible. I think there's so many more female comics than there ever have been, which is great. But there is still, you still run into people and gigs where people have quite old-fashioned views, or people who not are not that into comedy, um, are surprised to either see a woman who they think is good, or just see a woman at all, which is kind of crazy. But um, I don't know if you ever gigged with Maria Bamford when you were sort of doing the stuff in the 80s and 90s, but she talks a lot about that kind of stuff back in the day, and I kind of she's one of my favorite comedians, and I find her very inspirational because she's sort of equally well, probably more so than me, quirky, weird kind of comedian. And I think if she can do it in the 90s in the clubs in LA, then I can do it now, surely. um So yeah, it's a mix. It's I wouldn't. I mean, I feel like the world is sort of in a very weird place right now. So it's not as if we're bursting at the seams with sort of feminism, but definitely more women, and I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. I love Maria Bamford. I wish I had
Yeah.
had the chance to work with her, but alas, I have not. Now, I'm also wondering too, have you performed in the States? Because I've noticed that like Kevin Bridges,
Mm,
who has a really thick Scottish brogue,
yes.
he has to
Yes.
really tone it down when he comes to the States. I mean,
Yes.
if an American watches his YouTube videos or whatever, you almost have to have the subtitles on. Have you run into
Yeah.
that kind of thing?
Well, my accent is very, very light. So no, well, not as far as I'm aware. I mean, I do accents for some of my characters. Craig, he is a bit thicker of an accent, but I don't think so. I mean, to me, like to British people, or Scottish people at least, I sound very English, but then I never know how I sound to people not from the UK because sometimes they'll think I sound like I'm from another part of the UK or whatever. So I don't think I've ever had. I'm trying to think. I definitely, have had friends, been on bills with people with very strong, normally Glaswegian is kind of the stereotypically thicker accent. That's what Kevin Bridges has. And if you've got a very international crowd, it's you don't know how much of it they're taking in. But at the same time, uh I think it really depends on the situation. I've never gigged in America. I would love to gig in America. It's basically just a logistics thing, the cost of the whole thing, and I have no idea if, where to go, and it's such a big place, like what would be the best place to go. And I've had lots of lovely people say, oh, I'd love to see you if you ever come to X or Y, and I would love to go to America and gig, but budget allowing, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's absolutely changed since the old days. Nowadays, it seems that I've learned this. My daughter was the assistant manager of one of the local improvs here, so I
Mm,
learned the inside from her that nowadays, if a comic has a huge social media following,
mm,
you can book a club yourself and just tell all your fans I'm good, and they'll sell out
yes.
rooms. So it's completely different from back in the old days when the clubs either they just papered the room or they would
Mm,
bring in a big name. But you did mention Craig here, so let's go
yeah.
ahead and because you've gone viral on social media, you played plenty of characters and voice characterizations, but Craig the tour guide seems to have really taken off. So let me go ahead and play the one that went viral, the big one that opened the door for those who've never experienced the lethargy that is Craig.
Welcome to this guided tour of Auchtenmuir Distillery. My name's Craig. Today I'll be taking you through the majestic history of Ushkaba, Aqua Vita, the water of life itself, whisky. Please note that is whisky without an E. If it's got an E in it, it means it's Irish. And if it's called Scotch, it means it's American. And it means it's pish. We have been distilling whisky here for hundreds of years because, as I'm sure you could tell when you arrived this morning, there's absolutely fuck all else to do round here. Our whisky is unique and noted for its peaty flavours, which is another way of saying it tastes like mud. As you can see, we store it here in these oak barrels, giving an extra oaky, woody taste to your muddy drink. I'll be honest with you, I'm not much of a whisky fan myself. I like a Tennent's on a hot day, and on a cold day, a slightly warmer Tennent's. And now the part of the tour I'm sure you've all anticipated. It's the sampling, so please take a wee glass, swill it round, give it a sniff, nod sagely like you know what you're talking about, pretend you like the taste, commit to buying a full-size bottle in the gift shop for £75. That bottle will then sit unopened in your house for the next 40 years because you paid £75 for it, so you're not drinking it. It will then be inherited by your children, and they won't drink it either. It will then be found and ultimately thrown out by whichever person the government has charged with clearing out your child's house after they die, a hoarder surrounded by 40 cats. I can see there are some youngsters on the tour. Of course, they would not be allowed the samples. I will take those away. I don't like drinking the whiskey, but I will if I have to. Thank you for visiting the distillery today. If you want to buy any whiskey, there's some in the gift shop. What? I thought someone said my name.
So this is the first one that I ever saw, and I believe that this is the one that broke through. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think I'd done a couple before then. I'd done the first one I ever did was a castle tour, and I think he wasn't really a character at that point. It was just generic Scottish tour guide is annoyed at tourists, and then he sort of I think that did okay in it. So I did it a couple more times, and by the time I got to the whiskey distillery, he was sort of quite cemented as a character, and that was obviously as well. A whiskey tour is quite a popular thing, sort of, especially for tourists to do. So I think it was a lot of people, would retweet as something that they'd actually experienced. I've got a lot of whiskey fans following me, and I had to be like, I don't know anything about whiskey. I'm not interested in whiskey. I'm really sorry, but you won't get any more whiskey content from me. So, but yeah, it was weird actually. It was surprising that it struck a chord because it was just sort of I didn't think of it as niche, but I didn't think that many people would sort of resonate with it, which it kind of surprised me, and it was almost a bit the first time you get big with something like that, it's quite overwhelming to see the amount of people who are interacting. It's you're not used to it, and it sort of it didn't freak me out, but it was certainly a bit like, oh, you suddenly feel very visible. Um, and then it calmed down a bit, and now he's sort of in my roster as a staple thing. But yeah, I'm in that. I remember because that one went viral and it still kind of does the rounds. And I'm wearing a hoodie in it that I got in high school, and I still have, and it's a tatty old weird pattern thing, and I just think it's kind of embarrassing that, you know, I'm not. If I'd have known that was going viral, I would have made an effort to appear much nicer.
Well, that one alone has like over 2 million views, which is really impressive. So I know that there are so many people out there these days who are, publishing content, praying to go viral.
Mhm.
And there really isn't anything you can do to make that happen, is it? It's just sort of the luck of the draw.
Yeah, I think it is a couple of things you've got to kind of hit people at the right time, and also it depends. Sometimes, not in this case, but often, you'll if people do something topical, obviously that will tends to do better if it's released at a certain time. But there's not really a science to it, and I wish I could say this is the way you do it, because then I could do it every single time I did a video. But it's completely random, and it's funny what does go viral versus what doesn't. Like sometimes I'll dash off something. There's one I did recently that did pretty well about AI, and it's just about the fact that it's everywhere and all these companies want you to use it. And I did that in about a minute in my parents' house in my old bedroom on a whim. And there's other stuff I will like carefully construct for weeks, and it won't do well. But I think sometimes in that case, the stuff I really care about can often be the more niche stuff that's sort of less likely to do well. But I don't mind as long as I'm making it and enjoying it. But yeah, there's not really a science to it, except I suppose I think if you think something's funny, there's a likelihood other people will. And then, I think it's the best thing to do is not try and second guess what people want, because that is sort of the antithesis of the spirit of it. And it doesn't really, you can tell when people are kind of just trying to go viral. I think it's just always good to do what you like, and hopefully other people like it. That's what I found anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So you're on pretty much all of the social media platforms, right? How do you juggle them?
Yeah. I basically try and I sort of post everything on all of them, and then I try not to hang around on I think Instagram and Blue Sky are the two I sort of hang around on. the most. But yeah, I'm on TikTok. Like, people sometimes call me like TikTok's Eleanor Morton, and I think that's funny because I'm never on it. I never scroll through it or anything. I post the video and I run away because I don't want to have, another app to be addicted to. So yeah, and then YouTube as well. But I just try and kind of treat them all like I put the video up on every single one at the same time, and then sort of monitor a little bit how they're doing. But yes, and I don't really go on Twitter anymore because it's sort of become a crazy place. So it's kind of easy to avoid that one. And then I think the other one is Threads, which is sort of not. It's not really. I mean, I don't know if you like it, but for me, I don't know who it's for. It just seems to be driven on rage bait, and it doesn't seem to work for me. So yeah, I mostly just stick to Instagram and Blue Sky and just try not to get. It's very easy to get, addicted and just scroll, scroll, scroll. But I think I've gotten better at that because I did used to check every comment and obsessively check them and what people were saying, and now it's like a lot less. I think that was like a response, like my body going, "Oh, you've got to be alert on what everyone's saying," and now it's sort of, I'm like, "Nah, it's fine."
Right, right.
Yeah.
So then which of them do you find gives you, not so much which one do you enjoy as a human being, but which one gives you the best return?
That's a good question. Probably the three I use the most, and maybe it would be the other ones if so. Blue Sky, YouTube, and Instagram. Instagram, I think, um, pivoted quite recently to, it used to be just pictures,
Mhm.
and it sort of started to I think probably when Meta bought it, it started to become a bit more um invested in pitching in viral video stuff. So you tend to do well if you post videos as opposed to pictures, and um YouTube definitely has the best sort of creator reward system. Like, you don't get any money from Instagram and or Blue Sky. You have to kind of you have to ask people to donate, which they do very very generously. But YouTube actually has a system where you get revenue if people watch your videos. So I think that one probably because it feels the most like it's invested in what you're doing. But in terms of where the kind of the buzz is of other comedians sort of chatting about things and sharing things, probably Instagram more. And then I think Blue Sky is, for me anyway, it's like a replacement for the kind of writing side of Twitter. A lot of academics and writers tend to go to Blue Sky. So it's hard to say, but I mean, I think yeah, I think it's probably a three-way tie with that.
Mhm. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about your book. I happen to have a copy right
Ah,
here.
there it is. Yeah.
There it is. Tell me about how that happened.
Mm,
First of all, I love the book. I love the concept, life
thank
lessons from
you.
historical women, women who should have been written about or at least known about all along. So
Mm,
thank you for honoring their memories and telling their
thank
stories.
you.
Tell me how the book came about.
I was approached by Marilia, who's my agent now, and she said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" Which is, quite common, I think, for comedians to get approached because we are writers essentially. So, people ask if, and I hadn't really thought about it. My sort of goals are more script based, but we sort of discussed what I was interested in, and I'm a huge history fan, a huge history nerd, and I also think, I'm very interested in like the day-to-day history of sort of quote unquote normal people, and I think women as well. There's so many people I've read about so many women whose stories are just very, under the surface and just right there next to these big events, but just never really fully explored. And so, um, I wanted to I wanted to do a book that I would read as well. So, not nothing. I'm not an academic anyway, so I couldn't make it too academic, but something light enough to be fun to read, but then also, some of it's quite heavy subject matter. So trying to find that balance uh because yeah, and I wanted it to be quite a broad range of women as well, and kind of show that women from all kind of different places and time periods have had impacts on history, because I think too often um we just don't think about them. I was listening to a podcast the other day about the female Jewish scientist who discovered I'm going to get this wrong because I can't do science. Discovered the reactions, I think, that were capable to create atomic power, and basically didn't get any credit. Her partner, male scientist Boss, won the Nobel Prize for this. But then when that technology was used to create the atom bomb by him, he said, "Oh, well, she did that." So so they're only giving her the credit when it's the when it's the bad thing, and sort of erasing all the work she did before then. And I think there's just hundreds and hundreds of those stories in every aspect of life that you just don't hear about. And it's yeah, I just wanted to uncover some of them because I've barely scratched the surface there.
When I was looking for a narrator for my own
Mm,
book, Castlegate, there right behind me, um, I was trying to think of, like a Scottish actor who could, because I can't do accents. I can write in an accent, but I can't, I would embarrass myself so badly. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me until I heard your audiobook, because you created an audiobook based on this.
yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, Eleanor does all of these accents, and she obviously knows how to narrate an audiobook. So that's what sort of brought me to asking you to narrate this Castlegate. In fact, let me go ahead and share now one of the videos of you demonstrating your incredible range of accents.
Excusez-moi. Oh my goodness, I love your hair. It's gorgeous. Oh, my grandma had hair like that. She came over on the Titanic. No, you don't get a free drink. Hey, are you here for the festival? So other people in your family also have red hair. And are they also as odd looking as you? Excuse me, ma'am, I'm from the McCranky clan of Nova Scotia, and I would love to procreate with you, if you so desire, so that we may continue our lineage. Yeah, you got ginger pubes, have you though? Have you though? Please tell me. Here is my phone number. If you come to Russia, me and my husband, we will adopt you.
So yeah, so when I approached you to narrate Castlegate and mentioned, this is why I've got all these accents and you've got the experience, what was your initial reaction? Had you done any other audiobooks?
I've definitely done voiceover for little projects and things, and I actually used to produce audiobooks as a sort of day job. I would be the person that sounds a bigger job than it was. It just meant I was sitting in a booth with the actor and I was sort of checking that they were saying what they were meant to say. But no, I was so initially I have to say I was not skeptical, but I was wondering. You said, I've got this book about Scotland, and I wondered if it was going to be a tartan bodice ripper or something, because that is the kind of book you tend to get. Not that I would have been against narrating that. That sounds fun, but I was really pleasantly surprised as a history fan to find out, that it was about this real event that happened, and this sort of real family who had emigrated because I think first of all, I'd never heard about this, the mining disaster. And secondly, I think as someone who does also have relatives in America, various parts of America who emigrated, um, it's we I in Scotland we don't tend to hear a lot about where people go when they leave and what they do, and it had not occurred to me that anyone would go to the States to do any mining actually, because I thought, well, stay here and mine. But so I had no idea about that kind of that industry, and the sort of way people were kind of setting up and things. So it was really interesting to find out all that stuff, especially as a Scot who is interested in that kind of again, like people's history, social history as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was also, it would have been for me anyway, a
Mm,
challenge to go back and forth between the various, because you narrated the primary text in your everyday, rather English sounding
Yes,
accent, and
yes,
then
yes.
you would have to jump into various dialogues that I kept springing on you. I mean, you did German, French, Russian, Yorkshire, Welsh,
Yes, Welsh as
American,
well. Yeah.
Midwestern American. I mean, you handled everything I threw at you. Were any of those accents ones that you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this one?
I think you're being very kind. I think the American ones always stress me out because I can tell, I can do the vague kind of generic generic sort of American, generic Southern, generic Californian, generic Midwestern, but I certainly couldn't do specifically anywhere. So I think as long as no one's hoping that I have nailed a specific state, I'm safe. But it's yeah, I'm trying to think. I think the challenge with the Scottish ones was, you were conscious of making sure that they were authentic, but also um I imagine to a Scottish audience, some of them will probably sound more polished than maybe the real life accents would have sounded. But I also understand, apparently they redubbed Train Spotting because people didn't understand it. So I get it. There's no point doing an authentic accent if no one knows what you're saying. But yeah, I've always loved doing sort of because my accent is a bit of a hodgepodge, and people always ask me about it. I think it made me interested from a young age in accents, and I always ask people where they're from and pick up on how they sound, or especially in Britain, we've got such a huge range of accents in such small areas. You can go down the road and it can be different, and so yeah, I find it really fascinating the kind of slight variations depending on places or the words people use depending on places. Um, but yeah, definitely the American ones, hopefully I have done at least a passable attempt with them. It's very much. I mean, when I'm doing comedy characters, I'll probably do much more like Valley Girl kind of stuff because it's much easier to do something very, exaggerated than it is to be, I don't know, a Detroitian very authentically.
Right. Well, you really do nail them in some of your videos. You'll have like an American visiting Scotland. There's one who approaches Craig who wants to go see her
Yes,
family's castle. That is
yes.
the perfect American accent. It's so funny to hear a non-American doing an
Mm,
American accent because, I wonder, you guys have the accent, but, I don't have the accent. So to hear
yeah, yeah,
somebody doing our accent, it's funny to hear, oh, that's what we
yeah.
sound like. So,
Yeah. Well, I think what people forget in America is how much American media we get over here. So from a very early age, I'm watching a lot more American stuff than you are probably watching British stuff. I mean, it's different now because there's so much crossover, there's so many more shows that are set, in a lot of sort of different places. Netflix and social media and things mean that people hear more accents. But I think until quite recently, you would only hear the accents of whichever media the TV had decided to show you. So I think that is well, people often say, "Oh, British actors are so much better at American accents than the other way around." And whether or not that's true, I think what it is we just, if you absorb enough of it from an early age, it's more familiar. It's easier to do anything that's familiar. I'm much easier for me to do accents that I hear constantly than accents that I hardly ever hear. I find there's certain accents I can only do in very exaggerated way because I'm not, the more you know an accent, I think the more subtle you can make it. Um but it's nice to hear. People have been very kind about the American accent and said, it's bang on. I'm like, phew. But I do try and stick to very, generic stuff just so I never set anything anywhere too specific. Otherwise I'll get letters. But it's nice to know. It's nice to know I'm getting away with it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, with I mentioned this to you, I think, in our emails back and forth.
Mm.
When I first heard you do the Yorkshire accent and the Welsh accent, I literally got goosebumps. It was just so, whoa, it took my breath away and I don't know why. I don't know why it affected me like that, but you were so bang on. I love the Yorkshire accent. I'm obsessed with, like, I don't know if you've watched Last Tango in Halifax. Uh
Mm,
and there are several shows that take place in York.
yeah,
So I
lots of great
really
ones.
know that accent, and you
Yes.
nailed it.
I mean, well, we'd have to ask someone from Yorkshire about that, but I think I've certainly got the bare bones. I don't know how much you're familiar with Wallace and Gromit, the
Mhm.
animated cartoon. So that's set in Lancashire, which is the next county along, and they sort of have this comic rivalry. But that's the main character in that, Wallace. He has a Lancashire accent, and that so even within that, there's there's generic Northern, which is probably more of what I've done, and then it gets Lancashire is sort of more rounded, like Lancashire, and Yorkshire is sort of more open, I suppose. I think it helps to imagine different mouth shapes when you do accents, because everyone's accent makes their mouth a different shape and stuff when they talk. So
Right.
I think sort of Australian is quite back of the throat, and
Mm.
American is quite forward, I think, and all these different things that you um have to think about. But I mean, I know some people who are really incredible at accents, and I'm very envious of them because, you would not know. I mean, I think Maria Bamford is a great example of someone who's just, she when she does a voice, she just changes completely, and her family impressions of her family are so spot on. They're so funny, and I think, yeah, I think it's a cool skill to have. So I enjoyed using it in the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed you doing it. Now, you've got so many things on your CV. You recently did a show on, what was it, BBC 4, Eleanor and Pals? I love
Yes, Radio
that.
4. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit tricky to get because it's on the BBC, so I think it may become more available in America at some point because there is a BBC America, but I'm not sure. But yeah, that was a 15-minute pilot with a friend of mine, Zara, who does a very funny Glaswegian character called Aileen, who's this sort of very very opposite from Craig, very posh woman who's sort of got airs and graces. And yeah, that was really fun as well. That was more accents, more characters. I think I feel like if I'm doing an act, like when I'm Craig, I can really, I'm not as I can really sort of sink into the role in a way that it's much easier sometimes to express yourself as a character than as yourself. And I think um accents definitely really help that. And I mean, I'm sure there's lots of interviews with people like Daniel Day-Lewis about this kind of thing, but it does help to kind of have that way of speaking. And even like, for example, with Craig's very slow, very very dulcet, and my whole face just like falls. It just completely, all my muscles relax because I don't care. And that really helps him come to life. It's just using that. Having said that, it's actually I did do a live show of Craig once for an hour, and it was exhausting. He's so he's so like you said, lethargic, that it really took it out of me in a way that I think doing an upbeat character probably wouldn't have done. So I'm not sure if I'll do a full hour of Craig again, as much as I would love to. Maybe I'll record one.
Well, I think you actually have a YouTube video where it's all of the Craigs, isn't it? Is that
It
right?
is, yes, I have done what do you call a compilation, a Craig compilation, and I mean, I think I need to add. I think there's more Craig since then, but people will always ask like, "Oh, I'd love to see more," and often people aren't aware. Sometimes the algorithm won't show you them stuff, so they don't know. So I always like to say, if or sometimes I won't have done a Craig video for a while, and they'll say, "Oh, it's Craig," and I can say, "Here's an hour of him. Enjoy." Like, there's plenty of Craig out there,
Right.
a
Now,
back
you
catalogue.
you also have your podcast. Let's talk about that.
Yes, yeah, I have a podcast with my friend Alistair Beckett King, who's a very funny English comedian, and we met a few years ago, and I think it was funny because Alistair has this, if you've seen a picture of him, has this incredible hair, this very bright red sort of hair, and it sort of looks like my mum's hair. So I felt oddly familiar to him when I met him, I was like, I feel like I've seen you before. But then it also turned out we didn't just look similar, we had a lot of overlapping interests and things. And for a while, I'd wanted to do a podcast about children's books because I did literature at uni and I'm really interested in, we did a module on children's books, and I find it really fascinating the way in which the sort of history behind them and the context and all the different types of children's literature, and it was just really interesting. And I also just I have a lot of children's literature from growing up, and I thought let's do a podcast where we sort of poke gentle fun mostly at the classics, and also just look at them and say, why is this a classic and is it still good? And yeah, it's been really fun. We only do one a month because we have to read a book. Sometimes it's just a picture book, so it's fine, but sometimes it is a bit chunky. So and Alistair is much more busy than me. He's got another podcast, Lawman, which is great as well. So I don't want to tax him too hard because he also does the editing. I have very little. I just swan in and I say my opinion on the book and then I swan out again. So I feel very lucky. But yeah, I've had really nice feedback as well. And again, I think I just wanted to do a podcast that I would also want to listen to, because I think that not that it sort of sounds cynical to say it was a gap in the market, but there wasn't really anything that similar. And I know that if I like these things, there are other people out there who must like these things. So, did you um did you have a favorite children's book that you want to suggest at any point? Because we haven't done many American ones actually.
You know what? One of my favorite, I actually still have them, or I went out of my way to
Mm,
buy. I don't know if you guys
yes.
had the Scholastic Book Club, but it was a book fair that it was like when you were in elementary school, they would
Mm,
come in and build like a bookstore out of
yes.
Scholastic books, and
Yes.
so I have a lot of them left. I loved. There was one called No Flying in the House. I loved that
Hmm.
one. There was another one called The Witch Child.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
I love the Roald Dahl ones, and I know that you guys have
Yes.
already done some of
We did,
those.
yes.
Yeah.
We
Um,
might come back to it. I really I haven't read them for years and years, but I really enjoyed the some of the Judy Blume ones growing up, Super Fudge and that kind of thing. I remember, and I
Harriet the
think the one
Spy. Have you read
Harriet the
Harriet the Spy?
Spy. I've never read it. I know of it because they made a movie as well, didn't they? Like in the
Yeah, the
90s.
movie was, I shouldn't say that. I like the book better, but it's
Yes.
a pretty big book, so I don't
Mm,
know if you guys would cover it on the podcast just because it would take a while to read. But yeah, that was an excellent one as well.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, wow. So I also want to mention that you have a Patreon if anybody would like
Hmm.
to support Eleanor Morton. Your website is eleanormortoncomedian.com. What can people find if they visit you there on your website?
They can find mostly up to date things about where I'm gigging. They can find links to other things I'm doing, to the podcast and the book as well, if you want to buy that, and just general updates. I do try my best to update it frequently, but I don't always get it completely up to the minute. So, but also if you follow me on Instagram, I definitely post pretty immediately on there. So that's another good place to sort of get info on what's happening.
Cool. And are any of your stand-up shows online? I haven't been able to find them, but also like with Eleanor and Pals, I don't know if I should admit this, but you can't watch it or listen in the States, so you have to be kind
Yeah,
of sneaky and use a VPN and
sure, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've never, so I think ITV, so there was a platform called Next Up, which is sort of, which you probably could get in America. Again, I don't know, but they partnered with ITV, which is one of our channels here, and then a lot of the videos from that are on the ITV online thing. I have a link in my link tree, um, to, I think it's Eleanor Morton Has Peaked, which is the 2022 show, I think. So that's there, but yeah, I'm afraid I couldn't tell you how easy it is to access. It's all a bit confusing. But yeah, I mean, hopefully I will get my next show filmed and make it available somewhere because I haven't done that for a while, and I would like to to have that recorded. It'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, once again, I want to show everybody Life Lessons from Historical Women, Eleanor Morton. Check it out. It's available wherever you buy your books. Eleanor, do you have anything else you want to talk about, or do you feel like we've covered enough ground?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you a bit about Castlegate and how um yeah, how it's been going because do you think you're gonna write another sort of chapter in the story of the family? Is that a plan?
Yeah. Actually, the Castle Gate actually went really pretty well. In fact, if you see this poster up here, we did a
Yeah,
documentary.
amazing.
The town of Helper, which you're probably familiar with now by since you've read the book, because the town of Castlegate doesn't exist anymore. They've torn it down.
No.
If you visit that spot, there's nothing but dirt. So the town of Helper, which is a few miles away, is sort of the centralized location for all the history. And they created a documentary about the Castlegate mine disaster for the 100-year anniversary, which
Mm.
was March 8th, a couple days from now, uh,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
2024. That was the 100-year anniversary. And I went there on that date to not only to I was in the documentary and we did a book signing and I visited the entrance to the mine at the exact moment. It happened just
Wow.
after 8 a.m. So I was there at 8 a.m. exactly 100 years later and, laid some flowers there. And I feel really, really connected to these people, not just my ancestors, but all of the miners who died there. And
Mm.
it was kind of, I mean, I don't claim to be a medium, but I could feel the presence of
Mm.
all these men. Like they're just so glad to have not been forgotten. So
Mm.
it
Yeah.
feels like there's this wind under my sails that they want the story told, so they're sort of helping me, get it out there and
Yeah.
get people reading it. But you asked if I'm writing another book because this is actually a trilogy. Um,
Mm.
because if you recall in the prologue where Buck and Littlejohn talks about this curse in the family. I'm
Mm.
writing a prequel to Castlegate about that witch trial that started this
Yes.
whole
Wow.
ancestral trauma thing rolling. And then the third book is going to be the discovery, it's they're all fictionalized based on true
Mm.
stories. So the third
Yeah.
book is going to be very heavily fictionalized because it happened, just a few years ago where we discovered all of this and realized that so many things that had gone horribly wrong in our family were due to this inherited trauma and these dysfunctional patterns that happened
Yeah.
as a result of. So, yeah, it's all in the works. It's just a matter of, as you know,
Exciting.
having the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I look forward to hearing more about it. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
great.
Can't wait to finish it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. It is so nice to touch base with you again, to see you're doing well and all that good stuff.
Thank you. It's been really nice to chat. It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Once again, Eleanor Morton, comedian.com.